EWO world, the emergency war order stuff, where we carried special weapons, both gravity and missile type. The gravity weapons were not guided at the time. The missiles obviously were. I can't get into how many of what kind we had, but I will say the crowd pleaser that we carried would do a pretty good job. Most of those were targeted for hard targets. And when we did the emergency war order mission, we were lone penetrators. We'd go up, get gas, and then we'd go in and do our mission. Our mission profile basically on something like that was we would get in at a high level where we thought we would be in radar coverage, then we would keep ducking until we were below radar coverage. During that type of mission, our minimum floor was 100 feet, and we would pedal as fast as we would go, which was 390 knots true. Dump our weapons, stay low as long as our fuel would permit, and then we'd climb up and go to our rescue base. The next mission, which was our conventional stuff, and that started, I think, in '83. With that, they would load us with conventional weapons. They would give us the option, or we would be targeted. We would go in, depending on the mission type. We would either drop clusters of conventional bombs, and at that time, they were not laser guided. Now they are laser guided. Had the opportunity to do a demonstration where we flew off from Minot Air Force Base, where I was, to where somewhere in the Middle East, where they had set up a simulated runway, where they had simulated airplanes parked along the runway, airplanes on either side of the runway. We went in, we were the first one in, so we took the west side of the runway. We could pace the way the bombs would drop, and our planning was to put a bomb before, on, and after where the airplanes were targeted. When we were done with the mission, we saw the after action films. The airplane performed exactly as we wanted it to. We put 3 bombs on each airplane. Those airplanes were no longer flyable. And the interesting part was the crowd that was watching this was only 1,000 feet from the runway, which meant we had to hit the target. So to get to the stuff that you guys are probably interested in, the sea surveillance, from a pilot standpoint, sea surveillance mission were just exceedingly boring. Especially if we were looking for surface stuff. We weren't allowed to use a radar because you guys could see the radar. So we're in running 500 feet above the ground at our max endurance airspeed, and quite frankly, before we would start the surface missions, we would go up and do a max refueling, which meant it would take us up to the max fuel. And then we'd take it down to 500 feet. At 500 feet at max endurance, we could run the ocean for a little over 10 hours. 500 feet for 10 hours, thank God for the autopilot, because, there's no way you keep the airplane 500 feet above the ground just doing it yourself. And all we were looking for were surface ships. Those missions were normally employed when there was either a failure in a satellite or they had to relocate a satellite for other national defense missions, and they needed to keep an eye on certain parts of the ocean. We would normally do that. Like I say, those missions were normally somewhere in the neighborhood of between 22 to 28 hours, of which we probably spent 14 hours at 500 feet. Really taxing. When you're done with that, you're ready for a beer. The next mission we got on was something like what Rusty had been involved in, which was we were in exercise mode with our own forces. And quite frankly, those missions were set up for us as airplanes to win. Because, if you guys didn't want to be seen, we weren't going to see. Simple as that. We didn't have any special equipment on board the airplane. We were in really running, trying to find you either optically, or if you were emitting something, we would find your emissions. Once we found your emissions, it was pretty easy to zero in on you as long as you kept emitting and you didn't go too deep. But again, the real difference between the surface surveillance and the subsurface surveillance was the altitude we flew. If we're in the scan mode, when we're looking for you guys on an exercise mode, we'd run somewhere in the neighborhood 1,000 to 1,500 feet. Once we got something from your emissions, then we'd take it down as low as we needed to go, with our minimum, our floor being 100 feet. The problem we had when we would zero in on you guys, we couldn't turn tight enough at 100 feet to get people a real good location where you are. We could get you within probably 400 or 500 feet, but if they wanted, really, really locate you in case they wanted to bring something in on top of you, they would normally bring in a P3 or something like that behind us to really locate you. The other one was subsurface missions. You guys probably know a lot more about the technology that we had in our bomb bay than I do. When we would go, oh, I just went blank. Okay, I'm back. When we would go in on a subsurface mission with technology, they would update us with some sensing equipment that were linked into both the I guess you call them the sonobuoys, and then there were some other signals, both electronic and otherwise, that we would get either from satellite or directly from the submarine. Our electronic warfare officer managed all that stuff. He would kind of aim us where we were getting signals. We'd have to slow down a lot to the point where we would actually have to put flaps down, and we're running at minimum flying speed once we got a signal, because the engines would kind of disrupt the fine tuning that we needed to get to really locate where you guys were. We would do that on, I can't say real life stuff, but when we were doing it on you guys, i.e. our own Navy, you didn't know we were there, i.e. you guys were not in the exercise mode. We were actually looking for you. And our success rate, as long as you guys weren't too deep, we could get you probably 25% of the time. But if you guys were really down in, from what we understand is your mission profile, you'd be too quiet or too deep and we couldn't find it. So that part of it was really technologically focused, where my job as a pilot, all I was doing was putting the airplane where I was told. And the big deal there was, if you guys were running semi-silent and we're trying to get a good fix on you, I would have to bring most of my engines back to flight idle and in some cases just running with two engines to keep me airborne because the noise and the emissions from my engines screwed up what technological signals we were getting. From what I understand, the P3s had a lot better technology than we did. We would just kind of narrow the area down. Once we narrowed the area down, then the Navy guys would come in and really do their job. Those missions really depended on what was going on real world. If we needed to find something, either you guys or the other guys, I had one mission where we did 3 max load air refuelings. We were down on the water for a little over 30 hours. When we did that, we had 3 pilots on board, so we could rotate the pilots through. We had 3 navigators on board, and we had 2 electronic warfare officers, so we could always run somebody through a seat. You could actually get some sleep and rest and eat and stuff like that. That was just absolutely physically demanding. When the weather's around and you're watching weather, you're flying the airplane, looking as much as you can look. And oh, by the way, when the seas get rough, the windshield does get wet. So it just really physically demanding missions. And I say that because the only place, I'm 6'4". The only place in the airplane that I could stand up was in the ladder between downstairs and upstairs. So when you're done with that, I mean, it takes you 20 minutes to stretch out to where you can stand up straight. So, those missions, it just beat you up. Simple as that. The mission operation in those, when we were down low, we were pretty much on our own. Once we thought we got a signal on where you guys were, we had satellite communication access to several different people. Once we got that satellite comm set up, we could communicate with higher headquarters on what kind of signals we had, where we were, using satellite navigation. They would sometimes try to help with augmenting our wide scan search with satellite, but chances are, they couldn't get enough definition to do us any good. So, once we found you guys, we could communicate where you were. We had pretty good sat nav, locations where we could tell other people where we were, what we saw, and then they could bring in other resources on top of you if needed. When we were doing the exercises where you guys would play with us, like I say, that was set up, quite frankly, for us to win, so that we could check the system on how it worked. They would run through communications to the surface fleet. Surface fleet would either actively run people in on you or simulate run people in on you and actually find you. Depending on what they were trying to evaluate, if they were actually going to run a surface ship in on you, we would stay with the target in an area where you couldn't see us, or we thought you couldn't see us, until they brought a surface ship in close enough to where they could pick you up, and then they would play with you. If our job was just to find you guys, we'd go in, find you, stay with you for a little bit. For lack of better terms, run the headquarters coordination to make sure that they could do everything they needed to do. And then we would be released from the target area, and then we would climb up and either be reassigned to another area or just go home. That's kind of about all I got, Rusty.
Okay. A couple questions that did you, for one thing, as a commanding officer, if I came up to periscope depth and I saw a B-52 heading to me at 100 feet, I would probably have to change my underwear. So, I mean, I've had a zero angle on the bow frigate coming at me when out in San Diego, but I've never seen a B-52 at 100 feet. I'm not sure I'd want to. A couple questions for you. Did you have the capability of launching sonobuoys, or was out of your bomb bay, or were the sonobuoys launched by somebody else?
Somebody else put them in the water.
Okay, was that normally P3? It had to be a P3 or a brick.
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm assuming it was P3s, but
you had the technology to receive the signal from the.
Yes.
Okay, and the other thing is when you're talking, who are you talking to when you're in your area? You talking to a battle group commander or Air Force command somewhere?
We were talking to an Air Force command because chances when we were doing real world sea surveillance, there were probably a dozen of us on the water. And their job was, quite frankly, to make sure that we didn't cross over into somebody's area of responsibility.
Yeah, with airspace management. So yeah, we have the same thing with the submerged space there. Got a couple. For anybody who wants to add questions, just put them on the chat function, which is if you move your mouse down the bottom, it'll say chat. You can type it in. Tim Lyons is his question is the next generation bomber is the B-21. How is this like B-1, B-2, B-52? Can you tell us about the B-21?
I don't know anything at all about the B-21. I know enough to be dangerous about the existing airplanes. I will tell you, when I left the B-52, they did a major upgrade, not only in the aircraft navigation systems, but also the bombing systems, and the ability to manage guided weapons. The weapons we had are strategic weapons, and what I'm talking about there specifically is our special weapons. Our gravity, i.e. the bombs, we couldn't guide those. That was based on how good I was at putting the airplane on target, and getting the automatic release. The missiles and the air-launched missiles, we could get pretty doggone close on those. And let me give you a scale here. You take a look at the front of somebody's house. We could take a new version of a short-range attack missile, which was tipped with special weapons. It was targeted at surface targets. We could put that missile at the front door. The Alcoms, the air-launched missiles, we could put it on the house. So the SRAM, if we needed to take something out, we could take it out. The Alcoms, air-launched cruise missiles, they could hit the house. The currently targeted missiles or even gravity bombs, with the laser stuff, you can put the laser on a window and it's going through the window. So, the navigation, the capability of the weapons now with respect to the current airplane, pretty gee whiz. So,
were they Tomahawks you carried? The B-52s could carry Tomahawks, can't they?
Yes.
So the modern generation,
Yeah, the Tomahawks were kind of proximity. You know, you get it in the area and it'd do its job.
yeah, because the submarine launch Tomahawks have incredible accuracy at 600 miles. So,
You guys obviously had a better nav system than we had, because if we had a choice on weapons to put on board, that was not one of them.
not really.
So.
Jim also asked, what was when you're out doing surveillance, what was your primary sensor? Was it eyeball, Mark 1 Mod 0 eyeball, or
To see you guys, to see you, well,
for any type of, if you're out on surveillance ops? I've done, when I was in the Med as a junior officer, I did a surveillance op on a P3, and most of their stuff was visual. They just fly around the Med and they'd see foxtrots sitting on the surface or something like that.
well, we had a pretty good ECM panel in it, or ECM, electronic countermeasures.
Yeah.
So if you guys were emitting pretty much anything, we could see it. You know, depending on the visibility, you know, in most cases, we could see you electronically before we could see you visual. You know, and that was both surface and subsurface. So, you know, it's a pretty good panel.
Well, were you ever able to see a periscope? A lot of times when we do ops with P3s, the two major issues with P3s always wanted to mark on top. So in order to do that, they came out with crypto that was usually a day old, because if you changed radio day in the middle of the op, they stayed on the old radio day where the submarine force would go to the new crypto. That, in my experience, was the weakest link in coordinated ops by any things is the communications. UHF.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and that was one of the things that we had over the P3s. We had a better emission panel than they had. You know, and that's when they'd call us in, quite frankly. You know, so if you guys were emitting anything, we could see it, depending on how high you were in the water or how low you were in the water.
Yeah, unfortunately, we never admit unless we're told to.
Yeah, you know.
How many B-52s are still flying, and how long do you think they'll keep them in the inventory?
I just happen to have that information somewhere. There are currently 52 B-52s actively in the inventory. 4 of them are with Edwards out in the test range. The rest of them are active duty, either at Barksdale or Minot.
So they're still part of the triad.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You know, they're not sitting alert anymore, and they haven't sat alert for a long time. But you know, the weapons are still there, the missions are still there. You know, they're still studying. You know.
If a crew's on alert, the plane's on the ground. They do it both ways, because one of my junior officers actually has flown in the, I forget what it's, Tacoma, the aircraft for that. But if you're on a special weapons operation, are you in the air or are you on the ready? Or both?
When I was in, they had eliminated the capability, well, not the capability, they had eliminated the system where we would always have something airborne with a special weapon in it. That program went away late 60s when they put a pill in the water outside of Spain. You know.
Yeah.
There was only one time when I was in the bomber that we were airborne with special weapons, and that was a major snafu. It was supposed to have been an exercise, and when the message was released, it came out as a real world message, and we launched the base. That got a lot of people's attention.
Was the special weapons, what, 24 hours in the air? Something like that? That's what you told me one time.
Yeah, depends on what's going on.
Yeah. An observation from Tim France. My father-in-law flew ASW missions from Trinidad in 1943 on B-24s before his heavy bombardment squadron was sent to England in 1944.
Cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. So, what do you think the future of the Air Force Bomber Force is?
I think it's based in stealth technology, first off. Basically because our mission profile let me go back and recap that. And our mission profile to do our job was we would go as far as we could go at high altitude. And then to get into our target area, we would run at as low as we could possibly run to stay below radar. Now that satellite technology has improved and satellite coverage has improved so much, that type of mission profile, as soon as we get to a certain point, their satellite technology is going to pick us up, and it doesn't matter how high we are or how low we are. So, the future of bomber technology is going to be based on, the stealth stuff. So.
Well, yeah, the B-20, B-21, I've seen some pictures of it. It sort of looks like a B-2, I think, if the artist rendering of it that's on TV over, I think it was over the 4th of July weekend or something like that. But has the drone capability cut into the missions that the bombers traditionally have done?
Yes and no. No, in the respect, if they're going for a tactical target, i.e., a house, drones, a lot less expensive to run, than a B-52. If they want to go in and hit a bunch of tactical targets, the bombers have the weapons capability and the number of weapons to hit multiple targets on one mission. And probably the best example of that was at the beginning of the Gulf War. Some of the first airplanes in that were taking things out, we had guys go in before the buffs that, took out the missile and the radar sites. After that, the buffs came in with bomb bays full of conventional laser guided weapons, took out multiple targets on one mission. As long as that type of ops necessary, they'll have bombers that'll do that.
What station did Anderson now? I remember when I was in Guam in the middle 80s as XO, Anderson was just a hopping place. There were planes flying in and out of there all the time. So, do you know what station's out there now?
No. Well, they might. Quite frankly, the last 10 years, I've lost track of, what's going on around the world. So, yeah. I agree with you. At one point in time, that was a hop and joint. So.
Yep. So, any other quick questions on Sam? I'll turn it over to our illustrious president, Jim Lyons. I want to thank you, Rich, both personally and professionally for your service. And I said that the idea of a B-52 at 100 feet just scares the hell out of me. But anyway, Captain Lyons.
Yeah, Rich, I'd like to again also thank you for a very interesting brief, and it looks like you had a very, very interesting career and learned a lot of stuff about B-52s. There's a lot more to it that I didn't realize. For the rest of everyone, I'd like to thank you for participating today. And we're starting this Zoom meeting profile for the foreseeable future until we get this world squared away with this coronavirus. So we're working right now for a series of briefers, And next one we have is a Rear Admiral Jeff Jablon, who was the commander of Submarine Squadron Subgroup 10. And our September speaker is penciled in right now to be Al Kinisi, Vice Admiral Kinisi.
Just one thing, Jabo, I pinned Jabo's dolphins on him, and he came into my stateroom today. He says, "Captain, I'm ready to get out of the Navy." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, he was a NUPOC." So he said, "Well, my contract's up." And I said, "Jabo, do you like what you're doing?" He said, "Yep." And do you like the people you're with? He said, "Yep." "So why are you getting out?" He says, "I don't know." Well, he decided to stick around, met his wife in stateroom 2 on the rivers, and now is a Rear Admiral, probably off to do something bigger. So anyway, again, Jim, thanks. Rich, thanks a whole bunch. And thanks for everyone. And I'll send out the Zoom link for Rear Admiral Jablon. He's up in the 5-sided funny farm now. And I appreciate everybody participating. And again, we did record this, and I again forgot to turn it on at the beginning, so we'll join Rich in mid-sentence, even though I had a little sticky on my computer. But until September. So thank you all for paying. Rich, have a beer for us down in Texas.
Will do.
Okay, say hi to Debbie.
Will do.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody.